Okay, checking the audio. Check the audio. Okay. Check it. Check it. Check. All right, audio's good there. Audio is primo. Check. Audio is primo. Check. Okay, audio is good over there. I should probably be bigger for this. Whoa! Imagine. Probably. I mean, I don't know that I'm going to cover up any text or something. I don't know. I haven't really done this before. Welcome whoever is out there and viewing. I like get this thing kind of set up, I guess. I don't know. I like this track, but unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be any music tonight. Tonight is primarily going to be me doing a very long monologue about a video I've been trying to make for years. Well, at least a year and a half I've been trying to make this video, and all my other strategies for getting it created have utterly failed, and so here I am trying out this method. I mean, I guess we can go to Notepad. We can always go to Notepad. What is the plan for tonight? Hello, can I zoom in? Tonight. I guess like pre-discussion and review of slide deck. It shouldn't take too long. And then I'm gonna try to power through it. Monologue style. Don't forget the preamble, I guess. So it is gonna be ultimately this is gonna be a YouTube video. That'll probably be a long format YouTube video, but I gotta get it out. I'm too worried about like the length and the content and all this stuff, and I just need to get out of my brain and out into the world, because it's just not going to be as perfect as I ever imagined that it's going to be. So we're going to review the slide deck, then I'm going to go through it, and then I guess we can have some discussion afterward. So this is pretty much going to be it for tonight. I guess that's kind of the plan. I guess so. I don't mean to like draw out the suspense here. And so as a preamble, what do I want to say as a preamble? Okay, so we're going to be talking about 3D VTTs, the challenges for GMs. Really, it's like a problem. It's a problem of expectations, and it's like this isn't the video I wanted to make, and I don't want to actually explain it too much, because I want to explain it in the when I actually launch into the thing. But I feel like I need to build myself up into it. Yeah, I mean, I guess I should just fucking start. Right. Any questions? No. The viewer, whoever was watching was like, fuck this. This is insanity. I'm out of here. No way. Okay, so I guess we just start it. Start from the beginning, swap it, and put that PowerPoint away. That's what we're gonna do. All right, and I got my notes now. So I'm probably not really gonna be reading chat. I don't think I'm gonna be reading chat much at all, unfortunately, unless like somebody does like a sound bite, maybe. I don't know. I guess that's kind of how it works. I think it's how Devin Nash does it, so I guess it's good for me too. And I don't know. Like I said, this just needs to get out. I just need to get it off my chest. So whatever, here we go. So tabletop RPGs in a 3D VTT. It isn't a video game. And this is very true. And for me, it's a lot about expectations. It's challenges that GMs have heading into 3D VTTs with their players, not exactly doing what they want them to do, and not exactly understanding what it is that their GM wants them to do, right? Like, so it's mixed expectations. And definitely, if you want to skip this whole preamble, I'm going to have a whole pre-thing where I talk about prior videos and stuff. Absolutely skip ahead. I'll put timestamps in the videos down below. or in the description. Follow those. Skip all this stuff, please, or I will bore you to tears if you're not into it. So yeah, in the last video, we discussed different scene types. There's hybrid scenes, there's combat scenes, there's role-playing scenes in 3D VTTs, and kind of the how you would set up some strategies for those in your writing. So when you're writing your adventure, blocking out the progression of your story into scenes and then determining what types of scenes those are, and based on what types of scene those are, you're going to use different kinds of boards in the 3D virtual tabletop, like Tailspire or whatever. And this isn't just limited to 3D VTTs. This is really any VTTs or any time you're introducing technology into what could theoretically all be done in theater of the mind. Like if you're gonna not do theater of mind, you need to have a good reason for it. And if you do it, there are particular strategies that you can use to make those kinds of scenes run smoother. So where do I want to start? What do I want to start? So uh, this isn't the video I wanted to make. The video I wanted to make was all about transitions. So I want to make a video about transitions in Tailspire based on the type of scene that you're running and strategies for making those transitions smoother to maintain immersion with your players. And unfortunately, every time I tried to make that video for the last year, there's been another topic that I wanted to talk about, which is the motivation behind those the strategies in those transitions. And it doesn't make sense. Those strategies don't make sense if we're not all on board with the motivation for why we're even doing what we're doing, like maintaining immersion and some other stuff. And so that's kind of where this video came from. So there's a problem that I was running into when describing the strategies for these scenes. And really the problem is that running games in a 3D VTT is a relatively new discipline. You know, there's no standards for it. Um, and so I did a bunch of Google searches, right? How to game master in a 3D virtual tabletop, how to run D&D in a 3D VTT, and tips for running in 3D environments. And so I tried to go out to the universe and find what information was already there to kind of help me guide this conversation, if there are already standards out there that I could lean into when talking about these strategies for transitions. And I didn't find anything. I didn't like at this point in the video. Here's what I want to do. I'm terrified to like open up my Google search, but basically I Googled these things and didn't find anything. Trust me. Like I did it. You could do it now. Although maybe sometime in the future, my predictions will have come true and there will actually be standards. So here's the problem. There's not a lot of guidance out there for how to run a game in a 3D virtual tabletop specifically, the challenges that GMs are going to run into and how to overcome them. And so I had a kind of a question at that point, like what do I do, right? Like, okay, if there's no standards, then do I wait? You know, do I just ignore that fact and just talk like we're all on the same page? But I decided I'll make my contribution to that conversation. So this video is my contribution to the conversation about how to run games in 3D virtual tabletops, the conflicts that you're going to run into, and maybe the ability to set some standards or clarify some language or definitions around how to do it. Um, and hopefully people will find it useful. I hope. Although I hope this isn't a giant waste of time, but time will tell. All right, so now tabletop RPGs in a 3D VTT, it is and isn't a video game. So we need to like really come to grips with what a 3D virtual tabletop is and the conflicts that you have in choosing to use one. It's a relatively new medium at this point, maybe like 3 or 4 years old, um, and it's relatively new, and there's a lot of different ones that have a lot of different styles and stuff. And so the difference between running a game in like a 2D virtual tabletop and a 3D is that there's a little bit more of an emphasis on the DM as far as cinematography, participation, and expectations. Um, and I mean, me specifically, there's a lot more challenges with this in a 3D environment than a 2D environment because, I mean, I probably get into it here. Um, there are, when you're designing a scene, you're usually trying to evoke emotion and you're trying to do some cool cinematography, but at the same time, you have this whole concept of game design that's happening where you're trying to make it a cool scene, for some tactical combat while doing emotion and also while having your camera angles working out. But these things, evoking emotion, cinematography, and game design, often have different goals and they're often in conflict. I think maybe do I have an example? What was my example? Blah 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 blah. So in a 2D game, it's pretty obvious when you transition from like combat to 2D, right? It's pretty clear. In 3D, it's not so clear. Like we're still in a 3D environment. It still looks like we're playing Final Fantasy Tactics, but now you're expecting me to be role playing. You're not expecting me to be hunting around the map for goblins and things like that. And how is a player supposed to know that that has happened, right? So yeah, like creating and running games into 3D VTTs, this weird hybrid of cinematography, game design, um, and it's just strange to have to balance the both. But I really think that as soon as you identify that that's two things that you're actually trying to do, that gets you across a lot of the barriers of actually accomplishing it. So like we want players to be in awe of the cool things on the board. You put a lot of time and effort into your 3D environment. There's beautiful castles and trees and cliffs and oceans and stuff. Um, but at the same time, we don't want them to just be staring at the environment the entire time because we actually want them to be talking to an innkeeper. So it's this whole like how keeping their attention where you want it to be and letting them know that's where you want their attention to be so that everybody's kind of on the same page. Yeah, I'll see players turning their tokens around to face, like one player will turn their token to face the NPC innkeeper so they can talk to them, while another is actively like flying their camera around and being the scout, which is it's not necessary, but they don't quite know. Uh, okay. So the core issue here is um, oh yeah, I mean this slide would have totally helped that argument I was just talking about. So we want Vista to be awe-inspiring, but we want players to engage in the conversation with the NPCs. We want the Vista to be in 3D, but the players are primed for combat as we're still on a grid. This is an example of those conflicts. And this right here, if I duck out of the way, I might actually do. I probably need to shrink myself. I'll shrink myself down way down here in the corner. Well, I'll be here. That last sentence I'll just read to you. Um, the basis of most players' relationships with 3D space is heavily influenced by their experiences in video games, which are related but a bit different than a VTT. So there have been, I mean, your players probably have played video games before, and in those video games, they have expectations. Um, and those expectations, a lot of them are going to carry over to a 3D virtual tabletop, which is some bad behaviors, right? Like when you're playing Final Fantasy Tactics and you're flying your camera around and you're screwing around, it's not a big deal. But when you're effectively at a tabletop session where your GM is trying to tell you a story and stuff, it's bad form, right? And so we just have to recognize that that's kind of a thing that's happening, and we can talk about strategies for getting around it. And so I really do think that over here somewhere, as time passes and etiquette and standards emerge, these challenges with expectations will go away. The whole challenge of I'm in a particular scene, what is the player supposed to be doing? Where's their attention supposed to be? How are they supposed to be responding to the GM? Um, I think all of these changes are going to go away with time as players just get more familiar with them. But that is what it is. But in the meantime, until it's a standard, and until our culture adopts, whatever our new standards are going to be, there's going to be some challenges. And I think there's some stuff that the GM can do to help out in that regard. It's going to be our job for the next couple of years to help educate players and really and other GMs on what's going on. Like, why are these conflicts happening? So recognize learned behaviors and know it isn't personal. So, for example, can I move my character? Like as a slow fade in from black, an NPC's face is on the screen. The immediate natural impulse might be for a player to check to see if they can move or interact with anything. Can they move the camera? Like it's in Skyrim when you're in the back of the cart and it fades in and the guy's like, "Oh, you're finally awoken," right? I'm trying to jump out of the cart. I'm moving the camera around. I'm just like I'm being squirrely because the next point I'm curious. What can I do? What are the limitations of my ability to interact with the world at this point? And I think that these kind of learned behaviors here, where you're going to have characters that are immediately trying to move their tokens, they're going to be immediately flying around the map to look at things. Um, they're going to every little tiny item on the map they're going to ask you to interact with it. Like, oh, I see there's a bag of grain on the ground here. Well, I cut it open. And it's like, well, actually, that's not really there. Whoever made this Tailspire map added it, but it's not like really a part of the scene. For every item in the game, your players are going to want to pick it up. They're going to want to steal it. They're going to want to blow it up. They're going to throw it out the window. They're going to want to feed it to their horse. They're going to want to put it in their bag of holding. Like literally every single item on your 3D map that they can possibly interact with, they're going to interact with it, unless you have a conversation with them beforehand, such as not all the things that you see are actually there. Be sure to ask me ahead of time. And as you do your due diligence as a GM to like maybe clear some of that stuff out if it's a problem that you're having. But know that this stuff's not personal. It's not about you as the GM at all. It's about your players being in a 3D environment, and they're going to want to smash the pots to get the rupees out of them. They're going to want to lift the rocks and throw them out the window. They're going to want to steal the horse. They're going to want to punch through the car door and pull the dude out and jump in the car and drive. Like they're going to want to do all these things that they're primed and trained to do from video games in your 3D world to a more or lesser extent, depending on the player. But it's not about you. Just please, I don't know if this is the problem that people are having, but if it is, just know it's not personal. These are learned behaviors that players have been rewarded for a long, long time, and it's really fun. Like those behaviors are honestly super fun, and just know that your players are going to want to do that. So anyway, so know that there's some learned behaviors, and it's not personable. It's not personal. Um, and so on that note, this is the video I wanted to make. So we have the groundwork set. Your players are in a 3D environment. They're going to act like they're in a video game, and that's life for the GM at that point. And so the strongest tool that I believe is in the toolkit for DMs in 3D environments are transitions. When you transition from one scene to another, when you transition from we're just sitting down and kind of chatting and catching up and stuff, and we're transitioning to actually playing the game. When you're transitioning from combat or out of combat into like a role play scene, those transitions are where the GM can communicate what their expectations are for those next scenes. And so having the giant preamble before the video I actually wanted to make, this is a video that I wanted to make. But I felt like I had to get that whole bit out of the way about expectations in video games and all that stuff. So this is the video I wanted to make, and it's about transitions. Transitions as a guide for expectations. And so it's just like I described, the power of transitions can be used to communicate to players how they're supposed to interact with the next scene or interact with you in general. I think that's about it, right? So here's an example. We're going to transition from combat to a role play scene. We have a great scene where we defend a coach from attacking bandits. Okay, we fought the bandits, and now we're transitioning over to role play. So what can we do to make this transition smooth and have the expectations be clear? Whoop, I'm going to fly up here now. So one strategy would be that anytime we're displaying an NPC portrait. So Tailspire just included symbiotes. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you can like show cutouts to players. Maybe you show them a picture in Discord. Maybe I don't know how you share an image with them, but you do. And that could be your indication to your players that anytime an NPC portrait is displayed, the group is expected to role play and know they don't usually need to be on guard for a surprise attack. You're communicating to them that they can lower their guard, they can engage in some role play, and you're not going to like smash them with the unexpected troll hiding behind the cart because they weren't paying attention. Another strategy specifically in Tailspire is you can arrange the tokens in Tailspire, set up a cinema view, and then lock your player's view to it. So they can't move the camera, they can't mess with their tokens. Like you basically remove that option altogether. And then of course that communicates to them that you're in a role play scene, and that they should be focused on the party area, like where the party is, looking through that camera, rather than like zipping around somewhere on the map. So that's an example of how powerful a transition can be, going from combat to role play in a VTT where everything looks like combat from Final Fantasy Tactics, and that or XCOM or whatever, right? Like your players are primed to want to do video game things in Tailspire because it's got that vibe to it. And so this is just one example of how to go from combat to role play, and set up some standards with your players. Like if they see a portrait, we're role playing now. It's cool. You don't have to be terrified. Um, so here's some other strategies. Have plans. Have a plan for your transitions. In my last video from a year and a half ago or whatever, I really did go into great depth about writing out your adventure or writing out your campaign, breaking up your next session into scenes, and for each of those scenes, identifying what type of scene it is. Like, this is a combat scene, this is a role play scene, or whatever, whatever, whatever. And so, and I mean, you don't have to like heavily plan it in advance. Um, but in general, without planning, transition between boards and Tailspire can take a lot of time. And whatever immersion you had before is just totally gone. Um, and so without planning, or with planning, you can just enhance the player experience. And the strategies that I describe here, there's a spectrum. There's your home game where your players don't really care. There's your super high production. I'm streaming this game. I have played like Blue Box RPG, where it's like the highest quality Tailspire map and the highest quality role players, and we're really trying to do. We're trying to make the stream a big deal, right? And it's beautiful and impressive and stuff. And so there's a lot of planning that goes into that. Like it's we have a file that's literally like a movie script. Like scene one, camera is here, looking at this character. This kind of thing is probably going to happen. If we transition to this combat scene, and this leads into the like you can plan without it needing to be set in stone. You can tell yourself, okay, if they are attacked by the I think the conks, like the giant ants in Dark Sun, this is what that transition is going to look like. We're going to move to this board. The camera is going to be here. We're going to say whatever, and then we kind of run with it. But it might not happen, or if it does happen, we can change it slightly. So, um, in general, planning the transition enhances immersion because it should be faster. Like doing a transition in Tailspire seat of your pants is, I mean, it can be done, but if you're in front of a large audience, it can take 3 or 4 minutes, which is like it's eons when you're on stream. Um, but in addition to being smoother and maintaining immersion, you can really enhance the experience for in many other ways. So, for example, the party is exploring the exterior of a creepy house. The transition, or like basically the loading screen when they enter, can increase tension. So they're outside the house, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna get the next board ready. You guys all hang out outside the house while I get it ready. And it's like they're waiting on it, and then when you transition them, there's this tension is already like naturally built up. Another one that I really like to do is when the party is following a road in the mountains, a transition or loading screen can simulate the passage of time, especially if it's seasonal. There's a builder. Oh man, who is it that does the? Anyway, I want to look it up while I'm doing the thing. But at Tails Tavern, there's a builder who's using Baldrax's terrain generator, and he's generating a slab, and then he's generating multiple. And I'll put a link in the description. Multiple seasons for the same slab. And so you have these really cool mountain paths that are just like boom, boom, boom. You can have it be, you're traveling in the fall, and now suddenly we fade to black, and when we come back, it's winter now, and there's like snow on the roads. And so you can use those transitions to simulate the passage of time, which when you do it and your players notice it, I think it's as a GM, it's really satisfying, like to see their reaction to it. And so instead of your transitions being these, oh, they have to wait, it takes a lot of time. Um, there's this enhancement to it. Like there's this um, the tension where they're waiting to see what cool thing you've done with this particular transition. Okay, so here are just some general strategies for different scene types, and a kind of a description of the different scene types that I talked about in my last video. So for role play scenes, we know what this is. They're talking to a character. They're talking to an NPC of some kind, or some dramatic event has happened. Uh, and this is where I'll tell you that Tailspire is not the silver bullet for everything. In fact, virtual tabletops are often not the silver bullet. For role play scenes, I recommend taking the focus completely off of your 3D virtual tabletop. For like the Blue Box RPG stream, if they're role playing, he'll just transition it to the characters' faces, where they're talking amongst themselves. Because I honestly find the Tailspire board too distracting. Some of the boards that I've used are very, very high quality. I mean, like an Astalri board or a Genghis board, I could just fly around with the camera and look for an hour, just in awe at. Well, I'm also a builder, so I can appreciate what they've done. But it's just very, very, very tempting for a player to go look at all that stuff rather than just stare at some NPC's face, and like focus on roleplay. But if you are determined to keep your game within Tailspire during roleplay scenes, I would recommend lining up a cool camera angle, save it to a cinema block, and then lock the players in. Don't give them the option of flying around. They should be used to this experience from video games. Hopefully, the roleplay is engaging enough to not just piss them off. But that's the standard. Like the expectation is, if the cinema is locked in, then put your swords away. It's time to do some role play, or role play. I guess you could role play swords out. Whatever. You get what I'm trying to say. So yeah, then as you describe the NPC, bring your player's attention to the NPC portrait in a handout or a symbiote, and then this would be their cue to begin participating in roleplay. Um, yeah, I mean it just sets up their expectations. So hybrid scene transitions. So hybrid scenes are a little different. So combat's, XCOM, Final Fantasy Tactics. Roleplay is pretty straightforward. Hybrid scenes they can be different. So I've kind of outlined a few types of scenes that I would consider a hybrid scene. So hybrid scenes are usually ones in which the players are moving tokens around, but they're outside of combat, and they're also probably not locked into roleplay. So an example would be like to and from visible overland traveling. Um, so I still like using 2D overworld maps like World Anvil, and then as they travel across the continent from town to town, just like in Final Fantasy, like oh you enter the town and then we'll drop into a Tailspire board. Um, but in general, um, I like using a 2D overworld map, or I mean, you could have in Tailspire, you could have like a low scale build that you would consider your overworld map. Um, and so this type of scene would be transitioning from that overworld map to an encounter site of some kind. And you shouldn't have any challenge with this as far as expectations with your players. They've probably done this millions of times in video games, right? Where they're wandering around, then they go into a location. So there's not a lot to do there other than just kind of have it be smooth and be fast. Um, yeah, I put it here. This transitioning from an overworld map into a location for RP or combat should be an experience all players are familiar with. Um, uh, Transitioning to large scale travel should involve bringing up a map. That for me is like 100% the indicator. Like, okay, we're traveling somewhere really far now. We bring up the 2D map, and that's our trigger. Just some general tips: have tokens ready. Adjust for marching order. Like ask them what their marching order is before you transition, and then get them in marching order before you drop in. And it's like if they're traveling on a road and they run into some bandits or something, so you kind of have an idea. Um, and I also put a comment here. It's rare that overworld boards need hide volumes, which is nice. If you've worked with hide volumes before, it's how you hide things from players, and usually with overworld maps you don't have to have them. And so when you drop from your overworld map into like an encounter in the woods, that encounter you don't need to set up hide volumes for, which is just nice. More hybrid scenes. So to and from hidden exploration scenes. So an exploration scene, it's like overland travel, only usually occurs in such a way that the entire map is not made visible at the time, such as a cave tunnel. Um, these types of scenes will very closely map to the RPG gaming experience. So it's the same sort of thing where we transition from an overworld map into a cave. And your players can only see the cave entrance and maybe like a little bit into the cave, and that's all that they've got right there. Again, the transition should not be a problem for your players because they should be like super familiar with this and done it before. Um, I do recommend um, to decide in advance that the group is going to explore in initiative mode or not. And this is in Tailspire. Um, because what's going to happen is as soon as you start this map, everyone's going to grab their tokens and start moving them forward, all at the same time. And so by deciding in advance how they're going to explore, usually in initiative mode, it can reduce problems where all your tokens move at the same time, but one hits a trap. And it's like, okay, now we'll stop everybody. Everybody drop your token. Okay, where were you? Where was the guy that got the trap sprung? And so you have this like complication where everyone will pick up their tokens and fly them all around the place. And so if anything, actually, you need to stop them for any reason suddenly or for hidden things. Now you're trapped because you actually don't know where any of their tokens were. Um, if for whatever reason you don't want it to operate like an RPG video game, If for whatever reason your vision for how they're going to be exploring this place differs from, a JRPG where they go through a cave and kill some bats and stuff, you need to tell your players in advance because that's exactly what they're going to expect. It's what I would expect, right? And that's kind of like would be the norm. But if for whatever reason you don't want it to operate that way, as soon as you drop them into that new scene, you need to tell them how you want it to play out. I honestly couldn't think of any. I honestly couldn't think of any examples, but I just know that if for whatever reason you don't want it to work like move forward, reveal tunnel, choose direction, reveal tunnel, move forward, um, tell them because it's like basically muscle memory. They've been exploring caves and killing bats in RPGs since they were like 5 years old. So you're fighting against the tide if you want them to do something different and tell them in advance if that's the case. Okay, more hybrid scenes. To and from investigation scenes. So an investigation scene in Tailspire usually involves moving tokens around in an area and asking questions of or interacting with objects. So I've loved Tailspire for this. I love it because this is really something that I don't feel well, maybe I just feel like it's so much more involved in tactile in Tailspire versus a 2D VTT where you're like, okay, I look in the trash can because there's actually a trash can, or there's a dude dead in the bathroom, and like we're all kind of standing around like wondering what's going on. Um, so yeah, investigation scenes are where your players are moving around, but they're most likely just like rolling skills and trying to figure stuff out. Um, it's also going to very closely resemble what your players expect from a video game. I mean, this is like walk around the room and press A and on everything until you find the thing that like moves the story along. It's exactly what it's going to be. Um, and so transitioning to an investigation scene is a lot like combat, only without the opposing creatures. I would still go in initiative if it were me. Um, Something that is interesting about Tailspire is that there's a really cool way to represent progress in a scene by having the slab change state. So like if a hatch is discovered or a bookshelf is moved in 3D space in Tailspire, if you have it kind of planned in advance, either with a hide volume or you're just going to delete something, it's really interesting in Tailspire to like have a barrel covering a golden goblet, and that they search the barrel, you delete the barrel, and the goblet's still there. So you can do, or they open the barrel and there's like a fireball goes off and destroys half the room, and you can then change the state of the room in Tailspire to like have it be on fire, like you can put fire everywhere or whatever. So there's opportunity in Tailspire in investigation scenes that I think you can't quite get in 2D that you can have a lot of fun with if you plan it well. Additionally, if it's like a large transition, you can actually transition the players to a new board. It's the same way where okay, so you have is it Narsh or something like that in Final Fantasy 3 where like the Magitech dudes show up like later on. I can't remember. They like destroy a bunch of the city. And so you have the first time you go there, the city is in state 1, and then you go back and there's state 2. So you could be exploring a room, and then they find a button that transforms the room, or they find a button, I think in my example here, they find a planetarium, and if they hit a button, like a telescope comes out and like the roof opens up, and so you actually transition them to a new board that has that new state. Um, and so that type of transition for a hybrid scene could be really, really cool. More stuff, city exploration, or I could just city stuff that you do in a city. Um, so usually when a scene is in a city, one player's like, I go to the armor shop, I go to the alchemy shop, I go to the whatever. So transitioning from another scene to a city scene, it's a lot like the overland travel map. I recommend using like a low detail city, or even you could still use a 2D map, right? Um, and I think it just happens naturally. Like transitioning to city exploration, it's likely to happen totally naturally, and you don't really need to set anything up in advance. Suddenly you're back to town, and then you're like, I go to the armor shop and I sell all this stuff and I make money, or I go buy an item. There's not a lot of transition to happen there. I think the expectations, kind of like investigation almost, are pretty clear to players. I don't think there's a lot of conflict. I would say again, decide in advance if you're going to have your players use initiative as they explore a city. I recommend it because sometimes your players that don't speak up as much um, won't get a chance to do anything in a city, or you have one player that always does like 35 things. If they have to spend 35 turns, one at a time doing that, it can throw that back a little bit. Um, full cities are becoming more and more common in Tailspire, and they're very awe-inspiring. And by full size cities, I mean 1 to 1. Like 5 feet is 5 feet, not the like low detail that we're doing, which is about 4 to 1. And they're really cool, but watch out for performance issues. Those maps are huge and beautiful, but you're going to be running at like 15 frames per second. So if you're trying to screen share, if your players are on potato computers, you need to be very careful. So definitely load up those full-scale cities in advance and either cut them down to the parts that they're actually going to be exploring, or maybe use a 2D map, and then as they drop into the armor shop, you like transition them to the armor shop board or something like that. Um, I would say liberal use of cinema blocks directed at buildings. So even if you don't move their tokens to the armor shop, if you have a city and you have a bookmark for the armor shop and you click on the armor shop and you have a cinema block for the armor shop that's just like a cool shot of the armor shop with a sign, where they can just like they get the picture that they're in there. You don't have to move their tokens, that kind of thing. So transitions from locations within a city, you don't actually have to move the tokens and do it. You can, um, but for like ease of use, I highly recommend just like having some cinema blocks pointed to where they're going. Um, a good example would be the Village of Barovia map that I've published. I'll probably do punch that in the description too. Um, I like to make really big tokens for the players, and then when they're like, I'm at the armor shop, I actually take their great big token and like just put it on top of the building. Like, okay, you go to the armor shop, thump, and then we talk about them being at the armor shop. Oh, I go to the wherever, and then I move that person's big token. It's like almost like a tactical map instead of like a 1 to 1 where they're walking down the street. But what's nice about that is if they do run into an encounter, I can then shrink them all down and have that encounter in the street. Okay, combat scenes. A warning, 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 warning. Bouncy Rock is trying to simulate an actual tabletop, and I feel like they have accomplished that. Unfortunately, it isn't intuitive to simulate uncovering a map as players explore in a cleaner, perfect way. There is no fog of war. There is some party-based vision where when one token can see another token or not, if there's something in between, then that token will be hidden. But in general, having a full board that you're like uncovering as they explore is very, very difficult. It's not intuitive on how you would do that. Um, I have videos on how to do it, and it's not easy. It's not something like a casual person should ever try to do. Full boards work fine until you get into combat and are trying to do fine manipulation between floors. So if you have a 5-story building and your characters are having a combat on the second floor, having your entire party with the height slider at the perfect height to trim the building so you're all seeing the same floor, and then grabbing those tokens and moving them without them shooting up into the sky or dropping down through the floor or like getting stuck on things or like you've met the hallways too small. So once you try to get into fine manipulation in a highly detailed board, it can very quickly get very frustrating. And so in general, I recommend using single floor structures until your group gets really familiar with Tailspire and they get familiar with how to use the height slider and they get familiar with all the tips and tricks that we use to move tokens around in a sane way. A lot of my boards, what I'll do is if there's a 5-story building, off to the side, I will actually take that building and cut it into 5 pieces and then lay those pieces next to one another. So um, as the players explore, I'll move them from floor to floor so that when we actually do get into combat, it is as Bouncy Rock designed, being a way to simulate an actual tabletop, not simulate a video game. In a video game, if your players got into combat on the second floor of a building, well, the playtesters and the developers and everybody involved in creating the video game have positioned the camera such and designed the controls such that you can do that um, in a way that you would expect. If you start playing in Tailspire expecting it to behave like a video game, in those instances, you're just going to be frustrated and disappointed. It's not the design, and it's kind of the whole point of this video is it looks like a video game, it feels a lot like one, but it's not one. And this is an instance where it will not act like a video game. It's not super refined in regards to the camera work in tight spaces where it's not, if you move your token on the other side of a wall and your camera's here, it's not going to like do the cool cutout where you can like see your token through it. It's just not going to do that. So, and I think they talked about that, adding that as a feature, but it's like, it's not their MO. Um, so anyway, I just wanted to bring that up here as a warning during combat scenes and combat transitions that this is really where the complication can come in when you're moving and doing fine manipulation. Blah 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 blah. And I think, what do I say here? They're really, really combat scenes in Tailspire are really, really great. And transitioning from RP to hybrid scenes is straightforward. You just roll initiative. Like if you're in an investigation scene and they do something that starts combat, perfect. Just roll initiative. Boom, you're ready to go. Um, the a real difference between virtual tabletop combat and video game combat is the level of interaction a player can have with their environment. And you should decide on how dynamic it will be and make that clear to your players. So in a video game, in the very beginning of the game, there's going to be a tutorial that shows you can shoot barrels and the barrels will explode. Okay, good for you. Now you can do that. But maybe in the video game, you never get the option to open the drawer on a desk. And that's just not a thing. And you know that from the very beginning. And so you never bother, right? The same thing can happen with a map in Tailspire. And it's a dangerous thing because you're actually incredibly limited in a video game because the amount of effort required to develop those points of interest to make it so that you can open all the cupboards, that you can look in all the bookcases and all that stuff would be the work involved is tremendous. But when you're doing theater of the mind and you're doing collaborative storytelling, I would really encourage my players to ask about things in their environment. And there's lots of different camps on this. For example, Udi's a fan of having less. He creates incredibly detailed boards. He created Castle Ravenloft. It just blows my mind. He creates very highly detailed boards, but I think when he runs games, he tends to throttle back the detail. The reason why he does that is to promote his players to ask him about the contents of the room, right? If a room is highly detailed with a lot of stuff in it in Tailspire, your party is actually probably less likely to ask you about the contents of the room because it looks kind of clear what's there, right? So, um, yeah, you should decide in advance how dynamic that's going to be. Is it going to be literal in that all of the items in the rooms are what they are? Or is it going to be a little bit amorphous where, you encourage your players to ask, but whatever you do, you should tell them. Like tell them, okay, always expect to be able to interact with the things you see or not, and to ask you or not. So anyway, uh, yeah, figure that out and tell your players what your plan is. The general process for transitioning to combat, though, is like move your tokens and your players to your encounter, start some battle music, roll initiative. If you want to encourage players to interact with items in the scene, be sure to describe it to them, right? So if there are a couple of things in the scene that you want them to interact with, embellish those things a little bit or maybe call them out directly. Um, yeah, conversely, if you're using a map from a prolific builder like a Stalry or even some of the stuff I've done, like warn the players that some of the stuff's not there. Just warn them. Be like, yeah, I just went and got this real quick, and I didn't want to spend the 3 hours to delete all the stuff that's not actually there. So just ask, whether it's there or not. Um, if you're really strict about token movement, like I mean, I'm actually pretty strict about it. Be sure to let players know that you want them only to move with like the shift arrow keys. Or to closely kind of track their tokens. So shift arrow keys will make the tokens move like one grid unit when they move around. I have players that'll grab it. I shouldn't say this because they'll get mad when they see this video, but they'll grab it and kind of be like, 5, 10, 15. It's like, okay, wait, count that over again. And we've had instances where they're short 15 feet, they're over 5 feet, it's whatever. But um, so I like the shift movement unless you're moving catty like at an angle. And in Tailspire you can't actually do that, I don't think. Or maybe you can do shift numpad. I haven't really tried it. So that's one strategy there. Um, Tailspire battle maps can incorporate huge bosses and verticality and really sophisticated environments with what your players can swim up waterfalls. You can have full on like flying combat in 3D space. Like you can do like super giant airship combat, like that kind of stuff. Um, use it. Use it in your combat scenes. Um, you can create an experience more dynamic than any video game in Tailspire. I'm pretty convinced. Between your creativity and the representations of your vision within Tailspire, you can do some really cool stuff. Um, and you should. You should. That's my advice. Am I done yet? Nope. Oh yes, I am. I'm pretty much done. So in summary, I hope these tips help align expectations with your players when running games online, either in a 3D virtual tabletop or not, either in Tailspire or not. I hope that this kind of discussion about player expectations, where they're really trained to do video game stuff and to behave like they're in a video game, and your 3D VTTs can trigger that lizard brain. And to know when it's happening and to kind of help guide your players on how to not be rude, right? When they probably don't know, right? And they can't help it. So thank you very much for listening. I know this is probably a very long video, but I hope that it does people some good out there. Um, and really, without our patrons at VTT Journey and our followers, none of this content would exist, right? Like we have an audience out there, and they interact with me all the time, and I feel so grateful for all those folks. And specifically, I wanted to call out Don, Mad Wizard over at Tails Tavern. He and I have been friends for a good long time now. Like as soon as we both discovered, Tailspire, people were telling us that we should talk, right? Like that we would get along, and I think we do. So thank you very much to Mad Wizard at Tails Tavern for being my friend more than anything. And then also Totally Online Gaming Group, Tog DM, super cool guy, great stream. Does a lot of stuff in Tailspire. He coordinates a lot of collaborative builds, things like that. Like this, kind of a coordination of the community that I don't really do, or I don't really have time. I want to so badly, but I don't have time for it. And his game's really nice, and he's been a patron for forever, forever, forever. Of course, John at Blue Box RPG. If you haven't seen the Blue Box RPG stream, you are really missing out. It's a really cool, positive community. I can't recommend it more. I mean, he had Richard Baker on his stream, the guy who wrote Dark Sun. Like the guy who wrote Dark Sun was on his stream, right? And like talked to me. And he's running a Dark Sun game right now where I'm playing a Thri-Kreen, and it is so exciting and neat, and he's passionate. So definitely go check out Blue Box RPG on Twitch. What else? Yeah, and we have a whole bunch of other content. So there's this video, there's the Curse of Strahd maps. There we have 5e adventure PDFs. We have a whole bunch of encounter boards. There's the Tailspire 5e creature blueprint database at Tails Tavern. We did a Kickstarter to have Castle Ravenloft and all those maps created in Tailspire, and it was successful due to your support. And I'll probably put all those links in the video description too. But really, thank you so much. I apologize it took so long to get this video out. But I mean, here it is. It's finally here. And I hope you understand why I couldn't do it. I guess like I kept wanting to make this video about transitions, but I really had to cover this kind of expectations bit. That's like a high level challenge with gymming and 3D VTTs. And thank you for listening. All right. Bye. I'm sweating. Oh, there's more? I forgot about this. Interesting. Oh, so I guess I'll just trim it. So general advice before beginning a session. This is just to save yourself time and save your players, having to wait on you. Double check your Hero Forge tokens are loaded and all your permissions and stuff. That can eat up some time. Hide your board list from players. You can give away secrets. Um, don't start a session on your first scene board. Actually use a zone in or landing board where they can like select their token, because then they're free to wrap up their conversations or BSing or whatever before like the game starts. And so from the very first transition, you have kind of control of the narrative and control of the emotion of the game. Like starting with that first transition, setting the expectation of once we transition from the landing board, we're playing the game now. So wrap it up. Plan for a board to encompass an entire scene. So I talked about a bunch of strategies for transitioning between boards and between scene types. But really, if you have a whole scene planned around one board, then that should kind of ease the impact of your transitions and maintain immersion more than anything. If a slab's impractical for each one, subboards or exploded views, such as if they're traveling up a mountain pass, Like you have one board here with them moving up, and then you have a second right next to it, maybe that you reveal and then transition them up, transition them up. Anything to have to do the whole like board, like I'm gonna summon you to a new board in Tailspire. That's really kind of jarring. And don't underestimate the power of the mind. If there's nothing token related, nothing combat related happening in a scene, it doesn't have to happen in Tailspire. It doesn't have to happen in any VTT. Oftentimes during a role play scene, I'll just put up a picture of whoever's talking to them. And if they're sitting around a table, I'll actually have like a little table and like put little pictures around a table, right? It doesn't need to be in a VTT. This isn't a video game where everything must be represented. So just collaborative storytelling, and yeah, don't underestimate the power of the mind. Fiend. There you go. Bam. Bam. That was tough. It's tough. Like I heard chat a couple times, and I'm like, oh, like I want to go look. I want to go look. Oh, geez, my live scene's all screwed up now. Hang on, hang on, hang on. Do I have like a just? Do I have like a just chatting? I have a chatting. I don't know what this layout's gonna look like. Gosh, that's nice. Well, okay. It's just like a really big me. And you can see I'm struggling with this green screen, yo. Actually, here. Let's do live scene, but I'll hide some stuff. Boop. I'll hide that. I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll just chat. I don't care anymore. Can you ask for advice? Are you still here? Probably not. How'd you go about doing a desert campaign? I mean, I can answer that. I don't know if you're still here, Newtonia. Probably not. I don't know how long ago that was. There's already tons of yeah. I mean, Severay, yeah. Like my response to Newtonia would be like, go to Tails Tavern. Go to Tails Tavern. Search desert map. Oh, it was only about 5 minutes ago? Yeah, dude. Go to Tails Tavern and type in the word desert. Desert. And like, bam. Okay, how many deserts do you need? This is how I would go about doing a desert map, is I wouldn't make one. I wouldn't. I straight up would not make one. Oh, desert campaign. How would I go about doing a desert campaign? It would depend on what style. If it was Dark Sun, I mean, you should go watch the Blue Box RPG stream and see how he did it, right? Get the Dark Sun campaign book and rename everything. I mean, well, the Dark Sun campaign book is very specific, right? It's got this specific, like, there are sorcerer kings, they are why the desert's a desert. It's a little bit different than like, we're just like dudes in a desert. Like, are we treasure hunters in the desert? Do we live in the desert because we want to be there? So if I was going to actually make a desert campaign, I would probably do some sort of like treasure hunting thing, is my guess. Actually, if I was going to do a desert campaign, it would be a post-apocalyptic game set. I mean, it'd be post-apocalyptic, where it would be like D20 Modern or something, or it would be the new it was a Kickstarter. I backed them on Kickstarter. It would be it would be what is the frickin' name of the dudes that did the new the go away the reinvented where is it? It was Evil Genius Games. Everyday Heroes. Okay, so Everyday Heroes. Dude, I'm super fucking happy with it. So Everyday Heroes is basically 5e only modern. So I would pick one of these settings, like I already have the core rulebook, but there's like the Crow, there's Universal Soldier, Rambo, Escape from New York. So I think I have the oh man, which ones did I get? I got Total Recall. Fuck yes, dude. That's fucking rad. So basically, I would go look and see which one of these everyday hero supplements closely match in a post-apocalyptic game, and then I would rename shit. Actually, dude, if you ran a Highlander game in the desert, oh, that'd be sick. But yeah, I would use Everyday Heroes 5e, and I would either use vanilla or I would use one of these supplements, and then I would just reskin it to be post-apocalyptic in the fucking desert. That's what I would do. That is what I would do. Yeah. Okay. So I think that's kind of what I wanted to cover tonight. I want to make so what did you think, Severe? I mean, I my love language, I guess, is PowerPoint. Like if I really want to somehow make my thoughts cohesive, I slap them into a bunch of slides and I go through them, and that's it. And so I don't know. I don't know if people will like the presentation or not, but it's just like I've been trying to get this content out about this video game expectation with players for over a year and a half, and I was just like, screw it, screw it, make a PowerPoint and just monologue for 30 minutes. And so I'll probably go through and I'll edit it, just edit stuff out. And then I'll just publish that and be like, okay, here you go. Sorry, I can't do the like video editing stuff anymore. Not that I did it a ton before, but I just don't have time. I don't have the skills to do it very quickly. And then I want to be a perfectionist about it. And it doesn't. Those are not a great combination of things. It's definitely a discussion that should be had or put at the front of a GM. Yes, 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 yes. And I could write an article that was like just that, like things to go over with your players before you start a game in Tailspire. Actually, I should write that down. I should write that down. Where should I write that down? Um, and I could publish that to my website. I have a website that I don't fucking use. Actually, I have a website and I'm trying to get assistance from a dude from Fiverr. Uh, oops. I mean, it's I can just jam it in here. That's fine. The thing is, I could sit down and write this. I could sit down and write 2,000 words in like an hour. No sweat. But it's the formatting it into, and this is what GMs should talk about with their players before a game in Tailspire. Right? It's the Wild Wild West. Know what players naturally be drawn to. Think like a cinematographer made scenes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, think like in this scene, what the hell do you want to have happen? And so if in my first YouTube video, I talk about that. It's like how to GM. I've named it something god awful. How to GM in Tailspire, Part 1. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but like that's my first one where I basically teach people how to, and it is the very basics of like map your scenes out, go to Tails Tavern, find slabs for your scenes. You know, there are tools for automatically generating content and stuff. Um, but if people don't do that, right, it's a very structured way to approach it. And so Robert, I think it's Robert. No, wait, is it Robert? Phantom NJ. Robert on the Blue Box RPG stream, he doesn't plan at all. He's just like the players just tell me kind of where they want to go, and he can just kind of do it that way. I don't do that. I need things to be a lot more structured, and it's just my creative process, right? Um, Getting players to agree up front what breaks up RPG combat exploration, the gap between. Yeah. Like, what are the indicators that? Oh, dude, why is this 100 there? I didn't hit the button. What is this random 100? What are you? Last XP value. I didn't know that was even there. Get out of here. Boop. That's funny. Things that GMs should. How dynamic is the environment? Right? Are all objects on the board actually there? Question mark. Um, like basically, how often should should players ask if things are there that they can't see, for example? You get 100 XP for participating. You get more than that, dude. We were joking about it afterwards. We were just like, what would that session have been like if you hadn't been playing cards? It would have been totally different. Totally, totally different. I mean, it would have been, I mean, the grappling rules that we were using, and we talked about that afterwards too, where we're not going to count Subrin as being a large creature, and bosses are going to have like legendary resistance against grappling, like that kind of thing to throttle that shit back. But if you hadn't made Roka large and raging, that would have been kind of an embarrassing boss fight, to be honest. So how dynamic is it? Like, how will players Check, 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 check. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yeah, it was me. Actually, oh, we can listen to music now too. Hell yeah. Bop, bop, bop. Okay, so where will hit points be tracked? Where will character sheets be tracked? That's gonna be loud. Good. Fuck yeah. That's good shit right there. Do. Okay, so where will character sheets be tracked? Where will campaign data be tracked? This is like overworld maps. Actually, should talk about before playing an online campaign, right? This is very general. And actually, this is gonna be like, this is like Tailspire specific stuff, right? This is not Tailspire specific. Or maybe this is. So here's the thing about Tailspire. You have to ask these questions about Tailspire because you don't have to in other VTTs. Because usually they're like all in one, right? In Roll20, the answer to these, it's all Roll20, right? So like the answer to the following may all be the same VTT, right? Some VTTs are not all in one. I don't know, some thought about that. Yeah, Tailspire is a very, very serious outlier in that. And it might be for like the foreseeable future. They're not trying to compete in that space. I mean, they're not trying to compete at all. They're trying to create their vision of a virtual tabletop, but their vision of a virtual tabletop is a literal tabletop. Right? You know what a literal tabletop doesn't have built into it? Character sheets. You know what a literal tabletop doesn't have built into it? Like campaign tracking, world maps, handout. Well, I mean, kind of handouts, but you know what I mean? But you get what I'm trying to say though. Like their vision, their core vision is not a virtual. There's a problem with definitions. What is a virtual tabletop? Right? Is it a literal virtual recreation of a wooden fucking table? Question mark? Like, is it a combination of features meeting the needs of standard tabletop RPG gaming? What do you mean by virtual tabletop? What do I mean by virtual tabletop? I think it can be both of these, and I think between Bouncy Rock and some other folks, the definition is different. And so that's why a bunch of people are pissed off. Like, well, this isn't a virtual tabletop. And they're like, well, yeah, it is. Literally. And then it's like, oh, well, yeah, well, be that way. They're like, you just walk away. Fucking be that way then. It's the most VTT. Yeah. Yeah. That's what's fun. Yeah, yeah. It is the most literal because it doesn't have like built-in rulers or whatever. Like it's most literal because if you couldn't do it with Legos and your action figures, you can't do it in Tailspire. Then that's you couldn't get more virtual tabletop than that. Dwarven Fortress in the palm of your cursor. Yeah. Have they released? Hang on. Have they released Adventure Mode yet? Sequel and multi-threading experiments. Damn it. June 8th. Wait. Oh, work's underway. God damn it. I really like Adventure Mode. I'm not super keen. I mean, I've tried 3 or 4 times to get into the, fortress building, and I just can't. I just don't have the time, man. I don't have the time anymore. Anyway, so here's, a very, very quick segment that I could do. And this is something I really want to start doing is for each of my streams, I want an actual topic. That's not like a Doomgen stream. You know what I mean? Like, I want to stream on. What did I say? Last time I said I was going to do it Saturday, like Thursday, Saturday, and then shit came up, of course. And so yeah, I want my streams to actually have a topic, and so that with basically the same format. Oh, Dwarven Forge. Yes. So they have that. I don't know if you've seen it or not. I backed. So okay, I am a virtual tabletop like aficionado, in case you were not aware. So I backed Arcana, augmented reality. Okay, get this, dude. If you haven't seen this, you should check it out. So it's an augmented reality VTT. They are partnered with so this is augmented reality. I don't know if you can see it or not. So like you look at it on your phone, right? And this is what you see like on a physical table. And the guys doing it are incredibly talented and knowledgeable in this space and stuff. But I mean, look at this. It's on a fucking iPad. Build on a massive scale. As a Tailspire builder, this is laughable to me. This is massive scale. Ooh, look at your massive scale, right? Like, no. But I could run a Doomgen like this, because the Doomgen fits more of this like dungeon crawly kind of experience. It's not like overworld campaigns and extravagant, beautiful cities and things that you can do in Tailspire that you can do in nothing else. Like the city of Tyr, Castle Ravenloft. You could not do Castle Ravenloft in this shit. Anyway, but they partnered with Dwarven Forge. They partnered with Fat Dragon Games. They're partnered with Hero Forge, and they're partnered with Reaper fucking Minis. So that's big. These partnerships, so Fat Dragon Games and Dwarven Forge both have an absolutely giant library of 3D models that are for printing. They're specifically for printing, but you could paint them up. They all click together just like this, exactly like Tailspire, kind of. A little probably less flexible because I don't think they have as many just like little accoutrement kind of shit. But it's going to be absolutely rife with microtransactions, right? That's not great, but it's impressive. And it's going to be augmented reality, which is super cool. Use terrain pieces infinitely to build as big as your dreams. No, not true. I have friends that will break that. You will not allow them to place as many as they want to place. No space right now for augmented reality. Use our 3D mode and play on your couch in themed environments. So basically a fake table with a board on it. You know what I mean? I'm not impressed by the visuals, but I'm impressed with the technology, and I'm impressed with these partnerships. And you'll probably be able to build stuff in their 3D space and then hit print on your fucking printer. Because it's all already set up for that. Custom paint schemes, build your own maps, and upload it. Oh, there's going to be a marketplace also. which is okay. I mean, I've been struggling to get into like a VTT map building marketplace for a long time now. Um, I feel like I was just 2 years ahead of the game. Like I feel like my energy to pursue that has dwindled, but it might jump up again once like Menu or something gets big. Oh, so I'm in the Menu beta. Ba-ba-ba-da. Actually, I installed it today and I immediately fell through the water and couldn't figure out how to place walls. I was only in it for like 2 seconds, but so I'll be checking out Menu, which is also going to have a marketplace. But anyway, so if you haven't seen Arcana, they already have a partnership with Dwarven Forge and Fat Dragon Games. Bringing it back, yes, I want to have themed streams that are probably going to be shorter. Like it'll probably be like, I'm going to jump on, do my bit. That's my discussion item. Have a little bit of a discussion and then call it. You know what I mean? Which I should probably do now because it's fucking. Oh wait. I saw your channel while you were streaming. I found your channel very interesting, so I decided to whisper you. But how have you been building your community out here? Who are you? How have I been building my community? I don't know. I don't know how. Maybe I'll reply to this guy. I don't know that they're a bot. Their name makes me think that they're a bot. Maybe they want to help me have 1 million viewers. Anyway, with that, I think I'm going to call it for the night. And then I'm going to highlight the thing and maybe I'll trim it up tomorrow. I do want to publish it to the actual VTT Journey YouTube, like official YouTube page. And we'll see what people say. People have been waiting a long time for another video. About time they got it. Right? Are you going to be there tomorrow? Wait, damn it, when did it? Yeah, Friday. Friday night, probably 8:30 Pacific Standard Time. We're going to do a Doomgen game. I'll probably... I should probably tweet it. Should I do it? Tomorrow I'll do an Instagram post. That's what I'll do. Tomorrow I'll do an Instagram post and announce the Doomgen stream. And I don't think we're going to do Saturday. We're going to do Saturday? We might do Friday and Saturday, but anyway, I'll do an Instagram post tomorrow with the schedule. I want to get back into that. This is the first like normal stream I've had in forever where I wasn't running the Doomgen or I wasn't on Blue Box RPG or anything like that. It was actually kind of weird getting the stream set up. I haven't done it so long. I haven't done a jogging stream either. I need to do that too. Anyway, I keep saying the name. I'm going to go. All right. Thank you very much for joining me. Anybody who's watching, feel free to follow or, prime sub or do whatever it is that you want to do. I should be back tomorrow with a game of Doomgen. I'll post an Instagram thing tomorrow afternoon with kind of my schedule. I think the next thing that I want to do is I want to have a stream where I go over my changes to the dungeon grappling system for 5e. And basically just kind of do like a 20-minute, like, here are the challenges that I see with the dungeon grappling system in 5e. Here are some strategies that we have implemented to try to get over that. Here's what I think these dungeon grappling brings to the table, right? Like, I think 5e is just doesn't have grappling. It's just got a big fucking void. And what dungeon grappling brings to the table, and the challenges in doing so, the challenges in bringing on this kind of new system that's supposed to integrate with standard weapon, like current weapon systems, and kind of the struggles that we have there. But hopefully it won't be quite as mega long. Like that was freaking 40 minutes. I kept looking over and being like, oh my god, I'm at 40 minutes and I'm still going. It should definitely be like discussion and then like a 15-minute thing and then more discussion. So less time with me just monologuing and more time with me interacting. But anyway, thank you so much for joining. Take it easy, Ray. Basically, this all was all for you. All this talking was for you. All right. Hey, take care, everybody.